Welcome to Swolehammer. So with Warcry 2.0 being in its infancy, we wanted to take a look and rate the reactions, the newest feature of Warcry, and see what each faction has to offer in a tier list of sorts. So Riley sorted these reactions by ranking color-wise. Red rank is terrible, won't be used pretty much ever, or you probably just shouldn't. Orange has very niche applications, also isn't very good. Yellow could be used sometimes, it's pretty good, usable in most situations. And green is fantastic, sometimes a little too fantastic, as we'll get into. So starting with the trash heap, we have the red ranks. Riley, kick us off.
All right, so first up, we'll start with Cities of Sigmar with the Hammerhall subfaction. I guess I'll call it a subfaction. It's called Martial Discipline. You see it here on the screen. The reds are, you can use them sometimes. It's not that it's like you'll never ever use them. I see this more as like a survival desperation reaction, like you're about to die and you need a body on a point or something like that. The issue with this is that you'll notice that it's only for one incoming attack action. A lot of times you're getting double attacked in Warcry. So one, it's like unless someone's moving into you and attacking, this isn't super relevant. Because the second attack is just going to kill you. And
you'll see with a lot of these reactions, especially the worst ones, it's for an attack action, a single action. These don't go over for a whole, like, the double activation of a model, and that's kind of what makes or breaks a lot of these.
Yeah, and if this was like a double or something, then sure, but you got to remember that reactions aren't free. Reactions are costing you a very valuable one of two actions for that model. And so while this is like, if it was just a double or something, sure, it seems fine maybe occasionally, but I'm not going to spend a potential attack action on this.
On to the next one, we have Anvil Guard, and it's Cutthroat Strike. Basically, it's the universal reaction, strike them down, but on a 3-up instead of a 4. Still not worth your reaction.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. If this is like a 2-up, that'd be great. I think it could be towing the line of busted, but you know, it's definitely usable. But like for a 3-up, it's not enough of a difference. Just use, I don't know, it just seems silly. All right, so next up we have our first controversial hit. I see this as like S tier on everyone's kind of reaction videos. It's the K-Knight Shadow Stalkers / Night Haunt reaction. For K-Knight Shadow Stalkers, it's called Slip Between the Shadows. Night Haunt, it's something else.
Who cares?
Who cares? I just don't see a situation when this is useful. Like, I can invent a situation where you want to, like, swirl around onto a point if you were, like, trying to double move to get to a point, but you couldn't make it. But it's like, if you're not going to get on the point, why did you go over like, there's, I don't know. People are also talking about how you can, like, use this to go on top of a platform, but there's never platforms that are that low to the ground. Because you can only move however far away from the model that moved toward you, like, ended that. Like, you can't move further away than that. So if they ended a half inch away from you, you can go onto a platform that's half an inch up. Is that what you want to spend an action on? Like, it doesn't make sense. I don't understand when you would use this outside of very niche circumstances. And again, red doesn't mean you will actually, like, never ever use this. Don't even look at it. But it's like the situations are so rare that I just can't put it higher than red.
Yeah, this reaction really exists to fix your poor positioning as opposed to adding value to your warband. So that's another reason why it ends up at the bottom of our ranks.
Next up, we have Twist of Fate for the Disciples of Tzeentch. This is usable by both the Demons and the Arcanite subfactions. I just don't see a situation where you're using this. Throughout the abilities for the Disciples of Tzeentch, I don't really see any that are super, like, game-breakingly valuable, that are dependent on the value of the ability. Outside of, again, situations that are probably not going to be that super common. So I just don't see a scenario when I want to do, let's say, a single attack instead of a double attack into something, or a move and attack, or a double move. Like, those are almost always going to be better options than this, so that's why I place this as red.
Next up, we have Raptor Strike with Corvus Cabal, and sadly, one of the coolest warbands also gets shellacked with the terrible reaction. The theme of Corvus Cabal, the situations are too specific to make them almost function half the time. It's cool thematically, but just doesn't work at all.
Yeah, my question is just like, how often are things vertically lower than you in match play, and all you really do is deal impact damage to them, and then you don't take impact damage? But if you wouldn't go on the ledge, you wouldn't have to worry about impact damage, bud. So I don't see many scenarios where this is just applicable at all. Next up, we have Unexpected Assault from the Cypher Lords. Kind of following a common theme of a lot of the reactions from the bespoke warbands. It's just not great. It's kind of similar from like the Gathered Heroes sort of thing from like the Fire Slayers, where you can have a friend come in. But this is only applicable for, I think it's the Mystic Room mark, which is only the Thrallmaster or the Luminate. So there's only really 2 models that can even make use of like being targeted by this reaction. That said, the Thrallmaster and the Luminate do slap. So they're good friends to kind of bring into a fight to then double attack into the thing that's moving into a mopier model. And they don't. And the other good thing is the friend that's coming in doesn't have to be within 3 inches. It just has to end the movement action within an inch of the enemy fighter. But the issue is like the Thrallmaster and the Luminate are both glass cannons, and so you're kind of just giving the enemy a better target to hit into on the following attack action. So I just don't. Again, it's another situation where you're kind of just hurting yourself more than helping yourself, because it's like, oh, here's the thing that you wanted to kill more. Have fun.
Next up, we have Baffling Parlay for the Flesh Eater Courts, which is unfortunate because I love my Flesh Eater Courts. Unfortunately, this reaction just doesn't do enough. Against low damage fighters, you're spending on action on basically nothing, and against high damage enemy fighters, this only has occasional application. Flesh Eater Courts are very squishy, so minusing 1 attack is not really going to save you in a lot of situations. You have a lot of different and more important things to be doing with this warband.
Next up, we have Spore Cloud from the Gloomspite Gets,
which is one of their 3 reactions for some reason.
Yeah, they do have a lot. There's only like 1 model that can use this, the Squig Herder. So there's very rare occasions when this might be good. If you're playing against like the classic Leadbelcher approach with ogres, and they're firing onto an objective where your guys aren't really moving away from the Squig Herder, sure, yeah, this would be pretty good. But that doesn't happen that often. Also the fact that like this is basically an anti-ranged damaged reaction, obviously. And when that's most relevant are like your treasure missions. And so you're picking up treasures usually on something that's very fast, especially with Gloomspite. You're doing like a Squig Hopper or a Bounder or something like that. Something that's going to move far, far away from the Squig Herder who has a 4-inch move. Because if you stay by the Squig Herders to stay in the Spore Cloud, your opponent's just going to converge on you and kill you. So if this was on like a fast model, it might be okay. You could run them alongside, the Squig Hopper or Bounder or whatever the case may be. But that's not the case. They give it to a very slow Gabo, and yeah, it's bad.
Also on top of the fact that range got even more nerfed in Warcry 2.0, and also that cover is just like almost like a non-mechanic in Warcry, really. Out of all like the GW games, it's pretty much like pretty non-existent. So it's a weird thing to kind of like emphasize in a reaction.
Yeah, there's very few ranged models that are actually good, so rip.
Now we're into the oranges, which have some application but aren't generally that great. Better than reds though, so here we go. Living City, back at Cities of Sigmar, and this is kind of a weird one because you get hit still, but then you can disengage for free. Is good when positioning matters, but you're also still getting slapped in the face, so you might not even survive to be able to do this. Kind of weird. Yeah, not really much to say here.
Yeah, this is teetering on red. There's decent situations where it's like you might be getting targeted by something that's kind of mopey and you just want to get away from a group fight. So it's like, yeah, you take 1 hit that's kind of weaker and then you get out of the mosh pit, but that's really about it.
Next up, we have Gathered Heroes for the Fire Slayers. And unfortunately, this just doesn't really cut it for the poor dwarves. This could be good to set up a double attack for, for your pretty beefy melee profiles. However, that's not happening very often because if you have a decent opponent, they'll just move to the far side away from the Fire Slayer that's moving to back up your guy. And that'll probably happen more often than not because Fire Slayers are insanely slow.
3 inches faction wide with no exception.
Yeah, and dwarf short leg meme or whatever here, it's silly and honestly kind of annoying. So on to the next one.
So on to the Lumineth Realm Lords with their blinding brilliance.
This ain't that smart, I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, it's not very brilliant. The problem with it, okay, so the application for this is during treasure missions. You're running around, you're getting shot on one of your really fast models like Windspeaker, Seneschals, or Hurricane Windchargers or something. However, you can really only nerf crits, and you can't use this until, you can't use this after you see what your opponent's hit rolls are. You can only do it before. So you don't even know if they're going to get crits, and then it's only half the crits that do happen because it's a 4-up, which is a coin toss. So this feels like another desperation reaction. Also, this means that you're not able to double move while you're trying to run away with the treasure. So again, teetering on red.
Yeah, honestly, any of them that rely on an additional dice roll to work is pretty mopey. And this doesn't apply to all of them, but I mostly do not recommend.
Also, we're saying that if you're getting shot, you're going to get shot by 2 attack actions, not by 1, and this only does for 1 action.
On to the next one, and sorry to disappoint all the Swolefon fans out there, but Starborn does not cut it. Good if your opponent has a mechanic that improves the threat range for hits, but that might only be Nighthaunt's Frightful Touch. On top of that, you're spending an action to still get hit anyway. It's just a melee version of the Lumineth one that works all the time, and it's still probably not that worth it.
All right, next up, we've got Gabapalooza's Spiteful Demise. This is kind of like the baby subfaction for Gloomspite gets. Reactions that are like blow up on death will never be read. But the issue with this one is it's on a 4-up, so even when you're dying, you only get to burn a reaction on a 4-up. You gotta flip heads. And on top of that, it's only 3 damage. Like, I know that more damage than that would be hard to balance, but at the same time, you're only getting it half the time. It's only when you're dying, and it's only when you're dying when you flip heads, and it's only when you're dying and you flip heads, and you have actions left to spend, like you haven't already gone.
Yeah, as you'll see later in this list, there are ones that make this one look absolutely silly.
Yeah, there's some that get a very similar reaction that is much better.
All right, now we're in brighter territories with the yellow tier. These are good ones that you'll probably use quite often, but they don't quite reach the top tier. So instead of being all miserable all the time, let's go on to some brighter pastures.
Yay! All right, for our first yellow of the night, or day, or whenever you're watching this, it's the Phoenicium from Cities of Sigmar. I think this is good in some situations for like the tankier fighters. You have a lot of models, you have some models that are available to you in Cities of Sigmar that like don't really have much punch, but they have like 5 toughness. And so when you plop them onto an objective and your opponent's desperately trying to remove them just to try to get priority on that objective, it's pretty good to just sacrifice an attack roll that would have been garbage anyway to just remove 3 damage points. So many things in Warcry 2.0 especially have base 1 damage. So outside of rolling 6s, they're not really hitting for much. And so when you're healing on a really tanky model, 3 damage becomes pretty valuable. So I like this quite a bit.
On to the next one, and it's Hollow Heart, which also has a reaction shared with pretty much half of the Chaos factions. So this one was a little tricky for us because we went between orange and yellow, mostly because, as Riley just said, a lot of things are base 1 damage now. So it reduces only to the minimum of 1 damage, so it kind of doesn't feel that impactful. However, when this does come into play, it is very important. And it might be better than we're giving it credit for, and it might be if Warcry 2.0 ever actually gets a defined meta that has more 2 damage stuff, sure. But right now, it's hard to say that's bad, so it's sitting in yellow territory.
Yeah, it's mostly just applicable for your heavy hitters, and there's not a lot of those. So, all right, next up we've got Oracular Insight from the Tempest Eye. This is honestly pretty good. This was almost a green for me, just because adding 1 wild die to your saved wild die, that's pretty nuts. The issue that I have with this is that it's heroes only. It's only heroes. And usually for your heroes, you want to be doing a lot of dynamic stuff, not just burning one of your precious 2 actions around to be adding a wild die. If you are playing a list that has like a really impactful, like swingy quad that you're constantly trying to roll for during the priority roll off, then this is probably valuable and worth using. And not all of the hero models are super like impactful, but more often than not they are. No, more often than not they are. So that's the only thing that's kind of keeping it out of green for me. This is pretty good.
So back to Fire Slayers, and they actually have a second reaction from their hero, the new model, the Orc Flamekeeper. And thankfully, they gave this model a pretty good reaction. Getting a party buff that just increases their hit and critical hit damage from melee actions in an aura till the end of the battle round is actually kind of sick. Like, that's pretty nutty in Warcry, just flat out. The only reason that this isn't green is because everyone's so slow, and it's going to be hard to get a lot of your dwarves in this party buff aura. That being said, it's still very good.
All right, next time we've got our Vampiric Sea Elves. Don't come after me with lore. I don't know how things are. So we've got Fade from Memory from Ideneth Deepkin. I like this and I don't. If your opponent is going to move in close enough to hit something and if that's a high priority target and you'd rather them hit something directly next to you, this is great. But more often than not, if you're facing a skilled opponent, they're just going to go to the other side of the high priority model so that you can't do this. Like if they know that you can, force them to attack something else, they just won't move there. There's going to be times, though, when you have your models kind of clumped up and that's not really possible. So I think with skilled play on your side, I think that this can be very good. Because if you flank the high priority model by 2 things that are a little more durable on either side, then it's going to be a lot harder for your opponent to move in and not trigger this. So it's a bit harder to use, and it's not always super applicable. That's why it's yellow instead of green. But I think this is pretty decent. All right, so now we talk about the Dark Oath Savagers and their instinctive dodging. Ain't that just like a Dark Oath Savager? I like this one. We talked about one that was similar not long ago, earlier in the video, but this time you get to use this reaction after you know what crit rolls look like. You know what the opponent has gotten on their rolls, which makes this obviously way better. You don't have to gamble on like maybe they'll get crits, maybe they won't, which makes this 1,000 times better. On roll up 4-up, it still just becomes a hit instead, but like we said, there's a wide gap between almost every model in this game's base damage and their crit damage. So even if their base damage is like 2, I'll take that over like a 2/5. I'll take that over a 5, It's a little frustrating because it's still on a 50-50 roll. 4-up is still just that coin toss roll. Rafiq and I kind of went back and forth a little bit between yellow and green on this one because you do get to do this with information of what your opponent rolled. But at the end of the day, I think because it's so flippy, this is still yellow.
Yeah, but when it works, it really helps mitigate the worst part of competitive Warcry, which is the swinginess.
All right, next is, once again, my beloved Gloomspite. This one is the best of the Gloomspite reactions, and it's called Pile On. It's similar to like that Fire Slayer, Cypher Lord sort of reaction to where if something moves close to you, you get to bring a friend in. The good thing about this one is that there's no limit of how close the friend has to be. And with Gloomspite, as I kind of learned at Adepticon, they have a lot of very mobile units like those hoppers and bounders, and so if you can just grab a friend that might be a little far away, that's not necessarily the worst thing in the world because they move pretty far. That said, the hoppers did see a significant nerf from first edition to second. with the loss of 5 strength, which is pretty dynamic. They also got a slight nerf to their wounds. But they're still like super mobile beat sticks, which love to see a double attack if they can do one. You do have the issue of, they aren't that durable, and so you might be bringing in a friend to serve up to something for an attack action that doesn't want to take a hit. However, in the right situation, I think that you can really use this to blow up a model that made a misstep and moved a little too close to something. So not quite green, but I think this earns its spot at yellow. All right, so the Cruel Boys got dealt another kind of similar vein of like if an enemy moves within 3 inches of you, you get to do a thing. For Cruel Boys, it's called Cunning Trap. This one's pretty unique. So you get to pick another friendly fighter within 3, and that can make a bonus attack action that must target the enemy fighter. This is really good for your decent shotgun ranged, I call it, options with Cruel Boys. Something like a Swamp Kala Shaman, a Hobgrot, that has a really good, range profile. Put them just on like the far side of an objective, and whenever something moves up to the edge of an objective or something like that, you just light them up. This is pretty much just a Unleash Hell, but for Warcry. Not quite green, but I think you can get a lot of really great use of this with like your weaker orcs to really get effectively 3 shots out of like a really efficient ranged attacker instead of 2.
And for the last yellow, we have Quick Bite for my precious fellow Ogre Maw tribe. Quick Bite's super fun, super thematic. It's important to know that you cannot do this with your non-ogre units like Frostsabers, Yetis, or Noblars. And while this is a gamble, it really does capitalize on a couple things. It gives you a literal bite back while also healing you.
I get it.
This helps you win a lot of those classic Warcry middle of the board slugfest that always happen for the last round or two. And while we can't in good conscience give it a green score, we really want to, because when it pops off, it's good.
Yeah, my only issue is like the ogres slap so hard and you're sacrificing a potential action to do this, and 3 damage isn't that much compared to what the ogre's probably about to do, but you get to heal. So yeah, like Rafiq said, you win that bruiser slugfest.
Yeah, and you probably would actually use this on like a lead belcher because they got like nerfed damage wise. So when someone's in range of that, you probably would pop this.
Sure.
And we made it to the top tier reactions for Warcry 2.0.
Yahoo!
These are the green tier, and we're going to go over them right now.
All right, so our first green tier reaction is Return Fire. Both the Greywater Fastness from Cities of Sigmar and the Caradron Overlords get this reaction. I know people say Caradron, I don't really care. So this is kind of similar to the Corn reaction that you're going to see coming up that you might be familiar with. But the good thing about this is that it applies to both melee and ranged attacks that are incoming. And you can't hit yourself like Corn has a risk of doing. The damage is not quite as efficient as Corn's, but you don't hit yourself, so that's always good.
Now on to Daughters of Cain. So this baseline is just great. Daughters of Cain have 1 baseline damage on their non-heroes across the board, which means this is more efficient than an attack action outside of rare crit fiestas. If a chaff fighter is being attacked by something with 2 to 3 attack value, use the heck out of this. It also must be mentioned that this is shared with Spire Tyrants, and they have a good 5 toughness amount of fighters that can really utilize this. Alright, so now we go into Stormcast Eternals, which of course, this Thunderous Departure reaction is obviously top tier. Honestly, S tier could stand for silly or stupid in this case, because this is stupid good.
Yeah, it's worth noting here that if you're looking for a negative side, these guys don't die a lot, and so more often than not, if you have a model that's close to death, you're going to try to activate those first so you can get the value out of them, so they probably won't have actions left. But you can't always predict that, especially in Warcry. Yeah, so there's a risk of not having actions left on your almost dead models, so they wouldn't be able to blow up. That's not always the case, and this is easily a green for us. It's D6, and you don't have to roll for it.
Yeah, I mean, like, and also you have to remember, it's like, even though your models don't die that often, your units probably have taken a hell of a beating because they have like 20 toughness. So it's just like, it doesn't matter. Your opponent spent half the time killing 1 model from your warband, and then guess what? They take D6 damage because of it. Like, okay.
It's so funny how almost accurate the 20 toughness is. They'd have like a model or two that has 7 toughness. Like 6 is already this is the god tier ridiculous, you're never going to hurt this thing tier. And these guys went 1 more. All right, so we are still in Stormcast territory. This time we're more in the Vanguard Auxiliary Chamber region. This one's called Warning Cry. This is cool because it's one of those whenever something moves kind of close, but it's not really that kind of close because it's 6 inches. It's a lot further than a lot of those similar reactions. You would use this, I think, on like an Aetherwing or a Gryph-hound, something like super cheap and chaffy, and you basically just mark an enemy fighter. And until the end of the battle round, you can reroll 1 attack action against that. So, like, you just kind of have your bird, caca, and say, kill that guy. You just kind of get endless value out of this thing. Doesn't work well against chaffy lists, but if your opponent has, like, a big bruiser that you're otherwise probably not going to waste your time attacking into, maybe now you can.
Yeah, I mean, like, of course, Stormcast would get a reroll, which is, like, you don't get pretty much at all in Warcry, on top of the fact that you only have so many attacks, so it's just like it pretty much sometimes can just be like, oh, you just hit everything because you just have a way higher chance of just getting an extra attack in. It's pretty nutty. Next up, we have the Sylvaneth reaction, Vengeful Spites, also known as Shared Pain with Slaanesh and also shared with the Unmade. Now this one is absolutely fantastic. I mean, it totally makes up for the fact that a lot of what's going on in Sylvaneth and Slaanesh that would use this have pretty mopey attacks. So being able to get value of bite back damage, and in some cases a lot of bite back damage, could really get that model's value worth in and do more than their actual like double attack or something like that.
Yeah, I feel like reactions like this really make your opponent sometimes second guess whether or not they want to move into an objective or something to try to scoop off like the low value models, because you're going to get slapped back. And sometimes pretty hard.
And here you are with Khorne's due for both Khorne, demons, and mortals. Well, I'll tell you, Khorne didn't get its due with Warcry 2.0 because demons still don't have leader abilities, but they got a good reaction. But seriously, this is pretty top tier. These bite back reactions always have value. And in this case, for things that kind of have a mid to average attack profile, which unfortunately is a lot of Khorne, you're going to be getting a lot of value by just blowing back on your opponent with mass amounts of damage if they miss. Sure, you can take extra damage when they crit you, but your Khorne, your stuff's not surviving anyway.
Yeah, and this one I actually want to give a little bit of a story time from a game against my buddy Jay. If you're kind of doubting, if you're doubting like the riskiness of like, oh, maybe they'll get crits and I'll take more damage, I put a double attack from a spirit host into something that had 5 toughness, stupidly obviously, but I had already probably lost by that point, so I didn't care. I missed 10 out of my 12 attacks, so I took 20 damage from this reaction. Yeah, 20 damage, so pretty good. It's pretty good.
Yeah, and you're going to miss a lot more on Warcry than you crit, obviously.
Yeah.
Now we're on to Tzeentch Demons because they get split and split again as a reaction. I mean, this is obviously a stupid reaction. Like, it's S tier dumb, again, like the Stormcast, but probably even more straight up dirty dummy busted. This is, I mean, splitting is just, it hasn't been balanced in any iteration of 40k, of AOS. It took so many point adjustments. Now introducing it to Warcry, I mean, it's pretty much just like borderline toxic. It's just like you're just getting value. You're just setting up new fighters when they get taken down, especially in Warcry when like a lot of bodies and stuff matter in the stupid mosh pit that happens. I mean, this is just like absolutely fucking stupid.
It's also worth mentioning that if your opponent is double attacking into you and they kill something that has split, you can, when you put out the models that are new, you can put them out of range of the second attack. Because you have to set them up within 3 inches of where the fighter was. So you can put them back away so the double attack just doesn't happen, or they have to pick a new target.
Yeah, I mean, this is obviously insane and probably shouldn't exist.
Agree. Next up is Musk of Fear from Skaven. I really like this, especially for like clan molder style warbands, which is pretty much the typical approach to Skaven and Warcry. Your fragile master molders and pack masters are typically hidden like behind your big bruisers, like your rat ogres and stuff. And this reaction kind of helps them dance away from threats that try to move in and take them down from behind the rat ogres. You can kind of just dance out of range of things, which more often than not, the pack masters and master molders have crappy attacks, and so you don't really want to spend. You kind of just want to spend your double to make something fight again. That's about it. That's what they're there for. So I think burning an action on this is definitely worth it to save your precious little rats.
Next up in the Chaos list is we have Slaves to Darkness Boon of Fortitude. While this sounds mopey at first, you have to consider that you can form a semi-hordy list of cheap 6 toughness, 15 wounds fighters that don't die. When you're shrugging off 3 wounds at a time, while you have unkillable murder machines like the Chaos Lord on Kakadrak jetting around the board playing whack-a-mole with whatever they like, this becomes a real nightmare for your opponent. If you're looking to make a classic tank list, this really makes Slaves to Darkness one of the best factions in the game right now.
Getting near the end here, we've got the Splintered Fang with Vicious Riposte. It's another one of these buyback reactions. I think the Clear Blood with Shield can really abuse this, being spammy at only 65 points and relatively tanky. 4 toughness, 10 wounds. Their attack profile honestly just sucks. So I see this getting more value while you sit on objectives. Similar to a lot of these, though, it's hard to give a huge stamp of approval since you would have to buy loads of this box to get enough to properly spam them for a good warband. I don't know, but at a cost. That cost being both financial and the old sweat tax. So.
And speaking of sweat tax, this is shared with the Tarantulos Brood, which honestly makes it a way more sweaty, toxic list that probably shouldn't exist in this game.
Correct. You can now buy the Tarantulas Brood in a little bit of a cheaper box by itself, but yeah, this list wasn't fun in first edition and probably is going to remain the same. So that's about it.
Easy green and not in a good way. And last on our list are the Osiarch Bone Reapers. There's just a lot to like about this. Abuse this reaction with tanky chaff, similar in the regard to Slaves of Darkness, but since you have high toughness, you'll make it easy for them to miss a lot of attacks and cause that 5 damage points to them. We love this ability, and we haven't played OBR yet in Warcry, but this makes us surely want to. So that's it! After all is said and done, it is pretty interesting to see how all reactions are not made equal, even though a lot of them kind of got rehashed in kind of a lazy fashion. There are some truly unique and interesting ones.
Yeah, there's a lot of fun thematic options that are in this. If I have one complaint, it's just kind of like you said. They're really pretty disparate in their balance, and I imagine that they had to have known that when they made them. But it is what it is. I think that more than 1 or 2 factions can now sit at the top tables in a truly like sweaty competitive match play format, which at the end of the day is good and is definitely an improvement.
Yeah, and reactions really do improve Warcry, at least just on a base mechanics level. But let us know what you thought about this ranking video, and if you like it, please give us a thumbs up. Share, subscribe to our channel, and leave comments about how you think the Night Hunt reaction is good when it's not.
All opinions are wonderful.
As always, this is Rafiq
and Riley
from Swolehammer.
Stay swole.